On my birthday night, I got a call from the ICU. They needed me to confirm my husband's identity. A hotel key had been pulled from his body, and his phone still flashed his mistress's flirty texts. So I unlocked IT with his finger and screenshot all the texts. At 3 in the morning, a call from the hospital shattered the illusion of my 6-year marriage. When I arrived outside the ICU, and was handed a small clear evidence bag containing a diamond and a hotel keycard, both removed from Casey's lower body, I realized that the betrayal was far worse than I had ever imagined. It was not just ugly, it was bloody and toxic. 20 minutes later, I rushed into the hospital, heart pounding, vision blurred by panic. The doctor met me with a serious expression and spoke in a low voice. "The patient, Casey Graham, has gone into hypovolemic shock. Preliminary examination shows trauma caused by a foreign object inserted into the urethra, which tore tissue and damaged an artery." I froze. What? What does that mean? My mind could not keep up. Everything felt distant, surreal. A nurse stepped forward and handed me a sealed transparent bag. "These were removed from the patient's body. Please confirm the identity." I looked down and took the bag. There it was. His photo on an ID card. It was undeniably Casey. Behind it was a room key, Hyatt Hotel, room 1708. The two cards were stuck together with a dried, sticky substance I did not dare to identify. My knees buckled slightly. For a moment I thought I might faint. The nurse, quick on her feet, reached out to steady me. "Madam, are you all right?" Just then, a soft chime broke the silence. An alert from inside the bag. The sound came from his phone, which had also been placed inside, along with the ID and hotel key. The screen lit up, displaying a message alert across the lock screen. He must have tried the passcode 3 times, because now the phone was locked. I turned to the nurse and said quietly, "I am sorry to trouble you, but could you unlock this using my husband's fingerprint? All our money is linked to his phone." The nurse furrowed her brow, glancing at the screen, no doubt starting to piece things together. She nodded. "Wait right here." She moved quickly. Just a few moments later she returned, slightly breathless, and handed me the unlocked phone. Another nurse called out urgency in her voice. "Please handle this quickly. The operating room is asking for an update." I nodded and looked at the screen. The phone was open to a conversation. The name at the top read, Alyssa. My fingers shook as I scrolled through the latest messages. The words felt like blades. "Alyssa, it's dead. What kind of garbage did you send me?" It arrived at the office, and I opened it in front of everyone. It dropped on the floor. They all saw it. "Casey, you got it that fast." "Alyssa, I cannot wait until next week. Can you come over tonight and try it on me?" "Alyssa, what about your old hag at home?" "Casey, please do not mention her. Just the thought makes me sick. I cannot stop thinking about you. The way you look lying on my bed. Why is the difference between two women so huge? When she is in bed, she is just a pile of dead meat. I cannot even touch her." The timestamp read, 5:30 p.m. My hand trembled as I opened my own phone and found the message Casey had sent me at 5:31 p.m. Just 1 minute later. "Casey, sweetheart, my boss just sent me on an urgent business trip to another state, so I cannot be there for your birthday. But I ordered a gift for you. It is delayed but should arrive next week. Thank you for sticking by me through 15 years of marriage. I will love you forever." My chest tightened, a sharp pain twisting near my heart. The phone slipped from my fingers and hit the ground with a hard thud. Behind me a voice called out, "Madam, are you Casey's family? The surgical team is still waiting for you to pay. They have sent multiple reminders." I turned slowly to face her, my voice steady but cold. "I believe there's been a mistake. The man inside is not my husband. My husband is on a business trip out of town." "What?" "But his ID and home address match. What are you trying to say?" I took a deep breath, regaining my composure. "Why don't you try calling his parents? I just read through his messages. I am sure this is not my husband." The nurse hesitated, then picked up the phone and hurried toward the office to discuss the situation with her colleagues. I found a chair nearby, and sat down slowly, gathering my thoughts. I knew then this would not be resolved easily, not by a long shot. I had no choice but to wait. The first to arrive was the hotel manager. I glanced at my phone. It was already past 5 in the afternoon, and the light above the operating room was still glowing red. A nurse, wearing a mask and a frown, led the hotel manager swiftly toward the nurses' station. The two of them, along with a few others, spoke in hushed, anxious tones. Their faces were tense. I sat alone at the far end of the corridor, watching everything from a distance. My back was straight against the cold bench. But my hands trembled slightly in my lap. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. It was a call from my mother-in-law, so they finally knew. Their beloved son was in trouble. With a sharp ding, the elevator doors opened. My in-laws rushed out, panic etched deep into their faces. They hurried straight to the nurse's station without even glancing around. "My son, where is my son? Where is Casey?" my mother-in-law shrieked. The nurse quickly reached out to steady her, speaking gently. "Madam, please try to stay calm. The doctors are still doing everything they can." Her knees buckled beneath her, and she nearly collapsed to the floor. My father-in-law grabbed her just in time, his face twisted in frustration as he turned toward the nurse. "What happened? How does a healthy young man suddenly end up in surgery with massive bleeding?" The nurse's eyes darted to the manager and back. "We are not entirely sure yet. The hotel was the one that called the ambulance." "The hotel?" My mother-in-law's voice shot up sharp with suspicion. She looked around, scanning the hallway, until her eyes landed on me. Then her expression twisted into rage. "You," she spat. "Lena, what did you do to him? Was he not supposed to be on a business trip out of town?" Yes, that is what I had been told too. I also wanted to know what had really happened. Without warning, my mother-in-law lunged at me like a woman possessed. Her bony hands clamped around my neck, her nails digging into my skin. "You wicked curse. If anything happens to my son, I swear I will make you pay for it with your life." I stumbled back from the force, slamming into the cold tiled wall. The back of my head struck hard. A dull echoing thud filled my ears. A nurse rushed forward, trying to pull her off. "Madam, please, you need to calm down." But she shoved the nurse away with surprising strength. "Stay out of it. This is a family matter. It is none of your business." She grabbed at my shirt and then, with a loud crack, slapped me across the face. "You heartless woman, what did you do? How did my perfectly fine son end up in that operating room because of you?" That slap snapped something inside me. I blinked. The sting burned across my cheek, but it also cleared my thoughts. I looked at the woman before me, and suddenly realized she might not be my mother-in-law much longer, and letting her walk all over me that time had passed. I reached up, grabbed her collar in one tight fist and pulled her toward me. With the other hand I slapped the hotel room keycard against her cheek. "Watch your mouth," I said quietly. "You better hope to God the man in that room really is your son, because if he is—" I leaned in closer, my voice low and steady. "Then this mess will not be easy to clean up." She glared at me with eyes full of fury, but her hands, those dry twig-like hands, froze in mid-air. She did not dare move again. Just then my father-in-law stormed over and spat near my feet. His hand shot out, finger jabbing toward my face. "You better pray Casey pulls through. If he does not, you had better leave this place and never come back." I gave a faint smile. I doubted it would be their choice to make. At that moment, the elevator doors opened again, and two uniformed police officers stepped out. One was older, holding a notepad. The younger one was already activating a body camera attached to his chest. The older officer looked around and asked who made the call. The head nurse stepped forward quickly. "We did, the hospital. The patient's injuries raised concerns, and there seemed to be discrepancies in the family's account of what happened." I stood up slowly from the bench where I had been sitting all this time, straightening my back. I walked toward the officers, the younger. One looked me over carefully, eyes scanning my face. Then he asked in a calm but firm voice, "Are you the patient's wife?" I shook my head slowly and said, "I am sorry, officer, but I am not entirely sure the person inside is my husband. This afternoon he told me he was leaving town for a business trip." Then I turned to the hotel manager standing nearby, his posture stiff in his neatly pressed suit. "Excuse me. Could you please contact the woman who checked in with him? She may be the key to understanding what happened." The man cleared his throat awkwardly, then turned to the officer. "Actually, he checked in alone. There was no second guest registered under his room." I gave a small shrug and replied calmly, "That is all right. I have plenty of time. I am willing to wait for you to review the surveillance footage. I suspect foul play." The manager's eyes widened in alarm. He raised both hands quickly in protest. No, it is not like that." When the paramedics arrived, Mr. Graham was the only one in the room. He opened the door himself. He looked to be in severe pain and was taken away immediately before they wheeled him out. He asked us not to let his wife find out what had happened tonight. As those words left his mouth, my eyes burned, and tears welled up and spilled down my cheeks. Just then, the doors to the operating room swung open with a quiet click. A surgeon stepped out, fatigue etched deeply into his face. He pulled off his surgical mask slowly and glanced around, slightly puzzled. "Excuse me," the doctor said, his voice low. "Who here is Casey's family?" My mother-in-law rushed forward, grabbing the doctor's sleeve tightly. "It is me. I am his mother." The doctor nodded, his expression serious. The surgery went relatively well, however. He paused and took a small tray from a nurse standing nearby. It was covered with a piece of white gauze. "We found this during the procedure." While cleaning the wound, he lifted the gauze. Lying in the center of the tray was a small stone, gleaming, blood-stained, yet unmistakably bright. My eyes widened in disbelief. What is that?" The doctor adjusted his glasses and replied calmly, "We removed it from the wound. It appears to be a diamond." For a moment, my mind went blank. A diamond. Inside a human body, there could only be two explanations. Either he implanted it himself, or someone else did it for him. Still reeling from the shock, I heard the doors open again. A nurse emerged, gently pushing a mobile hospital bed. Casey lay unconscious, his face pale as snow, his lower body wrapped in thick layers of gauze. My mother-in-law gasped and immediately released my arm, then threw herself onto the side of the bed, sobbing uncontrollably. "My son, what kind of pain have you been through?" I stared at him, unmoving, my heart pounding. Then I suddenly remembered the hotel key card. I turned toward the officer. "Sir," but before I could finish, my mother-in-law spun around. With a cry of rage, she snatched up an 4-pole from the hallway and swung it straight at me. "This is all your fault, you cursed woman. You brought disaster to my son. You should be the one lying in that bed. Die." The officer lunged forward in a flash with a swift move. He pulled the pole from her hands and pinned her against the wall. "Madam," he said sternly, "you are now under investigation for attempted assault." Just then, a faint groan came from the bed. Casey's lips parted, his eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, but slowly scanning the chaos in the corridor. His gaze settled on the police officer, his pupils narrowed, his lips trembled. Then with a hoarse voice he whispered, "Mom, stop it." My mother-in-law turned instantly, rushing back to his side. "My son, you are awake. Tell me the truth. Was it this woman who did this to you?" She pointed at me, her voice sharp and bitter. Casey's eyes darted away from mine, his lips trembling as he struggled to form words. "No, it is not like that," he finally stammered. But before he could say more, a violent coughing fit overtook him. The doctor rushed forward, concern etched across his face. "The patient is still very weak. He needs rest." Casey's mother immediately stepped in, gently taking the 4-pole and guiding him toward the hallway. "Come on, son. Let us get you back to your room so you can lie down." One of the older officers nodded slightly and turned to me, offering a calm, professional tone. "If there is nothing else, you can sign here to complete the report." Casey turned back toward me just then. His gaze met mine, full of silent pleading, as if asking me to stop everything. I let out a quiet, bitter laugh and reached into my bag, pulling out a keycard. I held it up clearly. "Officer, I found this Hyatt hotel room card on him. I would appreciate it if you could help check the surveillance footage." "Lena!" Casey suddenly cried out, struggling to sit up despite the wires and tubes, but the doctor quickly held him down. His voice cracked with officers. "It is all right. Really, I am fine now, Mom. Take me back to the room. I just want to speak to Lena for a moment, alone." The officers exchanged glances. One of them handed the remaining paperwork to the nurse to complete. After leaving me a private contact number, they all quietly stepped out. Once the hotel manager also excused himself, only Casey and I remained in the room. I rubbed my temples. Exhausted, my body ached from tension, and my mind was fogged from a night without sleep. "Sweetheart," Casey rasped, forcing a weak smile. "Today's situation, it is just a big misunderstanding. I slipped while taking a shower, and hurt myself. I am sorry I scared you." His face was pale, drained of color, but somehow he still managed to put together a sentence that alone must have taken all his effort. I let out a long sigh. This night had taken everything out of me. "Casey," I said softly but firmly, "let us get a divorce. I will allow you the dignity of leaving quietly. There is no need to say anything else." He turned his head slightly, his voice turning cold and sharp. "Divorce, think this through. You are just a useless housewife now. I have supported you all these years. Without me, you are nothing." I looked up at him from where I sat. He said those words without even opening his eyes. His expression was blank, dismissive, as if what he said was merely the truth. As if he believed it, and maybe he was right. To him, I was just a housewife. Someone who no longer had value. That must be why they all felt so free to hurt me. Suddenly, the door to the room burst open with a bang. Casey's mother stumbled in, wailing as she rushed to the bed. She shoved me aside without a second glance, throwing herself onto her son with dramatic flair. "My boy, my poor boy, what did you ever do to deserve this kind of suffering?" Her rough hands smeared across Casey's face. While tears and mucus soaked into the bed sheets, she was sobbing uncontrollably, as if the world itself had betrayed her. Then, in the middle of her cries, she turned sharply and glared at me. "Are you deaf? Can you not see your husband needs to be cleaned up? Go boil some water. You stand there like a statue while your man lies there suffering." Then she jabbed a red-painted fingernail toward the door. "Your father-in-law's stomach is acting up. Go get some food. Can you not see what is needed?" "You stupid girl." Casey said nothing. His eyes remained closed. But I saw the slightest hint of a smirk tug at the corner of his mouth. I stood there for a moment, staring at this woman, at the son she raised, and suddenly, the whole scene struck me as funny, absurd even. I had tried to be kind. I had tried to leave things gently, but they were not going to let me, so fine. I was done being gentle. I straightened my posture, lifted my purse from the chair, and turned toward the door. "Sorry," I said. Not looking back, but I have to go. My son needs to be picked up. As I reached the doorframe, I paused and glanced over my shoulder, voice calm and clear. "Oh, by the way, the nurse mentioned there is still a $60,000 balance left on the hospital bill since your son is apparently so valuable. I am sure you will have no trouble paying it." I walked out. The moment the door clicked shut behind me, I heard a loud clang against it. A metal tumbler hurled in fury, judging by the sound. After dropping my son off at preschool the next morning, I took a cab directly to the hotel. There was still a few hours left before checkout, and I figured I had every right to collect my husband's belongings, or at least see what was worth taking. But when I tried to use the key card, it would not open the door. It had been demagnetized, disabled. When I arrived at the front desk, the receptionist informed me that the room had already been cleaned. The rest of the belongings had been packed up and placed in a storage locker. I had no choice but to call the local police again. These people, without some real pressure, they would never cooperate. As I waited, I sat on the sofa in the hotel lobby, flipping through the photo albums on my phone. 6 years of marriage, now dissolved in a blink. I found myself wondering, when exactly had he stopped loving me, Mrs. Barnes, the officer said, knocking gently on the small coffee table in front of me. "We have pulled the surveillance footage. In the video, Casey could be seen with his arm around a young woman wearing a tight-fitting skirt as they entered the elevator. The designer handbag swinging from her hand stood out sharply, bold and obvious. At 8:28 p.m., the hallway camera outside room 1708 captured the woman bending over to pick up a dropped gift box. At that moment, Casey shoved her eagerly through the door. "This was found by housekeeping this morning," said the hotel manager, handing me a sealed plastic bag. Inside were empty boxes of intimate products and several tissues stained with an unknown substance. The woman had kept her face hidden the entire time, burying it deep into the collar of her coat. The footage made it nearly impossible to make out her features. The officer glanced at his watch, clearly in a rush, and hesitated to say more. I knew he had other duties to attend to, but I was not ready to let this go. "Could you fast forward the footage, please?" "Start from around 2 in the morning, sure," he said softly. Several minutes passed, then, at last, the door to room 1708 began to move. The handle twitched, and the frame froze at that exact moment. There on the screen was a face I knew all too well. It was Mrs. Vaughn, the woman I saw every day when dropping off and picking up my child, the one my son always referred to as Henry's mom. And now she was rushing out of my husband's room in disheveled clothes, looking as if she had been caught in the act. "Would you like us to print a copy of this?" the officer asked gently. I nodded. As I did, a memory surfaced from just last week. During the parent-child sports event at school, she had come over to sit beside me, speaking casually. "Mrs. Jing, I heard your husband Graham just got promoted. You are so lucky. A man who is both capable and devoted to his family." Her voice had been cheerful, her smile bright. I remembered the tiny diamonds set in her tooth catching the sunlight. It had shimmered so brightly it hurt my eyes. Just this morning, she had walked into school like nothing had happened. Dressed in a beige trench coat with her makeup perfectly done, she greeted the other parents with laughter and grace. Meanwhile, I had spent the entire night at the hospital looking like a wreck, and that man, half dead in a hospital bed, still clung to the hope of protecting her. Well then, very well. After gathering all the evidence, I quietly left. From now on I would face this battle alone. The divorce, it had to happen. But before that, I needed to make sure everything was in place for my son. I opened the class group chat and found Henry's father listed among the contacts. I sent him a friend request. Going after the mistress was pointless. A woman like her had no shame, but she must have family. She might not care about her reputation, but what about them? Would they be just as shameless? Before he had even accepted my request, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It was my mother-in-law. The moment I picked up, her voice exploded through the line, a stream of angry insults and accusations. "What time do you call this?" Brady's mother snapped through the phone, her voice shrill with irritation. "You dropped the kid at preschool and then disappeared. Your husband is lying in the hospital and you think now is the time to run off and take it easy. Just wait. When Casey wakes up, he will kick you out himself. So why not pack up your junk and get out now?" I took a deep breath and forced a sob into my voice. "Mom, I cannot leave the house. Someone is blocking my door." "What? What do you mean?" "A man came this morning, said he is Henry's father. He will not let me out. He wants 500,000, or he says he will go straight to the police. I do not know what to do. Maybe I should send him to Casey instead." She went silent, then the line went dead. Perfect. Turns out the ones with shoes on are still afraid of those who walk barefoot. When I returned to the chat screen, I saw that the friend request had just been accepted. A message popped up. "Hello, are you Tommy's parent?" I did not reply. Instead, I sent him a photo. "Hello, Henry's dad. Is this your wife's diamond?" There was a long pause, then he responded, "I am not really sure. Maybe you should ask Henry's mom. I am out of town right now." "That might be a little difficult," I replied, "because this diamond was removed from my husband's lower body." "Excuse me, what are you talking about?" I sent another photo, this one taken in the hotel lobby. A woman in a tight embrace with a man. This woman, she's Henry's mother, isn't she? Silence, long and heavy. No reply ever came. I glanced through his profile. It was filled with photos of dusty construction sites, and his face always covered in grime. A tough life, clearly. On the way home, I picked up 2 large buckets of bright red paint. I made sure to avoid all security cameras in the building as I carefully carried them back, step by step. Then I began my little masterpiece. Walls, windows, and cars all became my canvas. I painted them with bold, dripping words. I even found the time to visit the in-laws' house and added a few splashes of color there too. Strangely, my heart felt lighter afterward, as if a storm had passed. 6 years ago, I married this man. Never once did I imagine a day like this would come. I had spent all those years being dutiful, keeping the household running, never asking much. I did not care who held the title to the house or where the money was kept. We were a family, after all, that was what I believed. But fate has a strange sense of humor, and today, it decided to turn. I returned to the hospital with a thermos of chicken soup. The man in the bed was still hooked up to a catheter and unable to eat. But the 2 sitting nearby, his parents, lunged toward the food like starving wolves the moment I opened it. I stood by the bed, gently holding Casey's hand. "You have been through so much," I said sweetly. "The doctor says you can eat tomorrow. Just a little longer." "Okay." Casey looked up at me with watery eyes and nodded. "Lena, I know I messed up. I should not have. I made a mistake." I quickly raised my hand to interrupt him. "What are you talking about? You only did what every man in the world would do. My husband is so charming. It is natural that women would fall for you. I should be proud." At that moment his parents, still chewing, chimed in with greasy fingers wrapped around drumsticks. "You see, she finally understands her place. You ought to reflect on yourself. If your man went looking elsewhere, it means you are not doing enough at home. You should take notes from those women and try harder next time they did not get to finish." The mother's phone rang. She shoved the chicken leg back into the container and answered. Her expression changed instantly. What did you say? Whose house?" "Someone splashed paint on our house." "What? Who the hell would dare throw red paint on my home?" "Just wait. I am coming back right now. I will find out who did it. They are dead." She was already pulling on her coat as she spoke. Then Casey's phone rang. He glanced at the screen. "Mr. Ross from next door," Casey answered, frowning, and then his face dropped. "What? Red paint?" He looked at me nervously. "Thanks, Mr. Ross. I will check it out as soon as I can." The old woman turned back toward us, voice rising. What? What did he say? Your place was hit too. Casey stared at me. Confused. When you left earlier, was everything still fine at home? I nodded slowly and said, no, there's no mistake. But earlier today a man with a knife was waiting at our door. He claimed to be Henry's father. I had never seen him before in my life. He hit me hard and threatened that if I did not give him $500,000, he would burn our home to the ground. I barely managed to shut the door and escape. Darling, we cannot go back there. It is not safe anymore. The older woman, her hands trembling slightly, looked at her son with unease in her voice. Then why would he come after our house too? I shook my head. I really do not know. Maybe we should just call the police. Immediately Casey's eyes widened. He snapped, no, we cannot call the police. Absolutely not. The room fell silent. Everyone stopped moving. The older woman slowly took off her coat and sat down in the nearest chair. She stared blankly at her son lying in bed and asked in a dazed voice, so what do we do now? Casey rubbed his temples and let out a long sigh. Let me think. Just then his phone buzzed with another call from the building management office. A calm voice spoke through the speaker. Mr. Graham, someone vandalized your vehicle. It was covered in paint. We reviewed the security footage, but the person was wearing a mask and a hat. We could not identify them. Would you like us to report this to the police? They might be able to find the person responsible. My heart began pounding, but Casey replied almost instantly, no, that won't be necessary. It was just a prank between friends. Thank you. Though perfect, it was time to begin Plan B. The older woman let out a string of long, miserable sighs, but as always, she never blamed her precious son to her. Everything wrong in the world was my fault. She turned sharply toward me and pointed her finger, her voice full of venom. You cannot even keep a man properly. Why do you not just die already? What is the point of someone like you even being alive? I took a deep breath and turned to Casey. I will pick up our son later this afternoon, but I am not going back home. I will find a hotel nearby for the night. I do not want to frighten the child. The older woman exploded again. Hotel, do you think we are made of money? Bring him back here and have him sleep on the floor. Tomorrow you can repaint the walls and that will be the end of it. I shook my head calmly. Then I will take him to my parents' place. What if something happens to him? I will not risk that. Casey looked at me and asked, then what do you suggest we do? I looked around and said, sell the house. Your mother has been followed. 2. We are not safe here anymore. We cannot get that $500,000, and that man is not going to give up. If we sell the house and move to a quieter, safer neighborhood, we might still be able to start over. The room went still. No one said a word. This house was Casey's property from before our marriage. He had always been emotionally attached to it, but I was patient. I had time, I had strength, I could wait. That afternoon I went to pick up our son. As I waited by the school gate, my eyes wandered just for a second to Henry's mother. She was there too, talking to someone. I could not help but notice her teeth. They lacked their usual shine. And at the corner of her mouth I thought I saw faint reddish marks, so they had played rough that night. After all, her eyes brushed past mine briefly. We did not speak. We did not need to. We both understood what had been left unsaid. There was no point pretending anymore. We both knew the game. After dropping my son off at my best friend's place, I sent a message to the man who had introduced himself as Henry's father. Do you have time to meet? His reply came quickly. I will not be home until 9 p.m. What do you want? I typed slowly and clearly. Over the past 6 months, my husband has spent a total of $238,000 on your wife. According to the purchase records, the items include a Cartier bracelet, a Tiffany necklace, and a Dior handbag. I would like them back now. There was a long pause before he responded. How do you know it was him? Maybe he bought those things for someone else. A man like that could have many women. I cut him off. Have you ever bought those things for her? He paused. Then came his hesitant reply. No, I haven't. So it was not you who bought it, a woman like her? A full-time housewife with no income of her own? How else could she afford luxury items like that if not by selling herself? Mr. Vaughn, do not tell me the two of you are running some kind of extortion scam that could get you both locked up. The man on the other end of the line stayed silent for a long time. Finally he replied, I will talk to her when I get home tonight. Please do not rush. If it turns out she took it, I will find a way to return it to you. I answered calmly, that is fine. Then I will hold off on distributing the flyers at the kindergarten. But just so you know, the printing cost me $500. I will need you to cover that too. It became clear to me right then. This man had the kind of tolerance that could swallow an entire desert. He was scared of trouble. The type who just wanted peace. I had hoped to team up with him, but clearly that would not be possible now. Still, for a man like him, marrying such a beautiful wife must have been the luckiest thing to ever happen to him. The next day, the cheater transferred $10,000 to my account, asking me to hire a few workers to clean the red paint off the walls. I took the money without hesitation and bought 2 more buckets of green paint. Then I threw it all over again. Predictably, he received another call from the neighbors. He looked over at me puzzled. "Did you repaint the wall today?" I shook my head and said casually, "No. The workers are not scheduled until tomorrow." "Why?" He let out a long sigh. It got splashed again. "Maybe we should just move out. We cannot sell the place like this anyway." I nodded in agreement. "That sounds reasonable." On the 3rd morning, when I dropped my son off at school, I waited outside the gate for a while. Sure enough, it was not Henry's mom who showed up, it was his father. Maybe he really was afraid I would hand out those flyers. I had to admit, he handled himself well. Most men, faced with a scandal like this, would not be able to show their face in public. After the kids went inside, he pulled me aside. "Excuse me," he said, "you are Tommy's mom, right? I spoke with her last night. She said she has never met your husband. Maybe there has been a mistake. That photo is not enough to prove anything." I looked at his face, so composed, so fake, it matched his wife's perfectly. I sighed. "Then I guess I will not hold back anymore. I have more than just that one photo. I have their chat history. I have video footage of your wife walking out of my husband's room past 2 in the morning. I also have photos showing the diamond in her tooth. Now, if you still want to deny it after seeing all that, we can let the court handle it." I turned to leave. He grabbed my arm. "Wait," he said, "let me think. You are trying to get your stuff back, right? There is no need to air dirty laundry in public. Let us keep this quiet." I gave a small laugh. "What would I want the stuff for? I want money, $238,000 to be exact. Let us round it up, make it $500,000, pay that, and I will let it all go. You and your wife can continue pretending everything is fine. If you cannot pay, then we will proceed through legal channels. Either way, I have the right to get my money back." He sighed. "I do not have that kind of money. The most I can manage is $250,000. Take it or leave it." I pulled out my bank card. $300,000. Mark it as investigation fees. Transfer it now, and I will hand over every piece of evidence I have. I also give you my word. This will never come up again." "Fine," he said. He got to work immediately. A few taps later, the money was in my account. I am a woman of my word. I pulled out the envelope from my bag and handed it to him. Inside were every bit of evidence, chat logs, hotel records, timestamps, photos, everything. By the time I turned the corner, he was still standing there, stunned. I remembered clearly, in those chat logs, his wife had talked about him like he was worthless. I never had the chance to screenshot those conversations, but it did not matter. I could recreate them. There is software for that. I printed everything, every shameless, vulgar word. He would never know what was real. Honestly, I was curious to see whether this so-called good man could really stomach it all. On the 4th day, when I arrived at the hospital, a nurse was in the middle of changing Casey's bandages. As she peeled back the gauze, a foul smell immediately filled the room. The wound, which had been sutured days ago, now showed clear signs of infection. Yellow-green pus mixed with dark blood oozed from the swollen edges, and the tissue beneath looked inflamed, even necrotic. The nurse gasped in alarm. This should not be happening. Casey looked down at the wound and went pale as chalk. His hands began to tremble as he clutched the nurse's arm in panic. "What is this? What is happening to me?" The nurse, shaken, pulled away. The used bandage fell to the floor as she backed up. I need to get the doctor." Casey turned to me, his eyes wild with fear. Lena, what is going on?" I stood still, unmoving, my expression calm. My eyes remained fixed on the grotesque wound between his legs, now exposed under the harsh light filtering through the curtains. The pus shimmered faintly in the sunbeam, like something alive, probably an infection, I said evenly, turning to leave the room. "Do not go," Casey suddenly shouted, his voice rising in panic. "Lena, please stay with me. I am scared. So he did know how that felt. Just then, hurried footsteps echoed in the hallway. The attending physician entered with 3 other medical staff, each moving quickly and with purpose. The lead doctor took one look at the wound and immediately frowned. He pulled on his gloves and leaned in to examine it more closely. "This is a severe infection. There are clear signs of necrosis," he said. Gently lifting the darkened tissue with his fingers, Casey let out a sharp, painful cry. "Doctor, doctor, what is happening to me?" he gasped. The doctor did not answer right away. Instead, he gave a signal to one of the nurses to prepare for a blood draw. Casey grabbed a fistful of the doctor's white coat. "Was it the surgery? Was there something wrong with how you treated me? Did you forget to disinfect the tools?" The doctor looked him squarely in the eye. "Mr. Graham, please calm down. We need to do further testing. But before we continue, have you had any unusual sexual activity recently?" The room went silent, utterly, painfully silent. Casey's face turned from white to a mottled gray. His lips moved, but no sound came out. The doctor gave me a quiet look, then gestured for me to follow him. Into the hallway. Once we stepped outside, his voice lowered. "Mrs. Graham, your husband's symptoms strongly resemble secondary stage syphilis, which is known to cause skin ulcers and tissue decay. We need to wait for the blood results to confirm it," but he hesitated, glancing back toward the door. "Infections like this are most often spread through sexual contact," he said gently, "and the foreign matter we extracted from his wound may have introduced even more pathogens. I recommend you undergo testing as well, just to be safe." I nodded slowly. Then, with just the right amount of tremble in my voice, I asked, "Is his life in danger?" The doctor took a breath. "If it is confirmed to be syphilis and it has already affected the cardiovascular system, then we will need to surgically remove the infected tissue. If done quickly, his life can still be saved." Before I could respond, the sound of fast, angry footsteps reached us from the end of the corridor. "What is wrong with my son?" Casey's mother shouted, storming toward us. The doctor calmly repeated the diagnosis. Her hand trembled, and the breakfast she had been carrying dropped to the floor. A carton of soy milk burst open, soaking into the tile. "Syphilis," she gasped. As if struck by lightning, she stood frozen, unable to comprehend what she had just heard. Then, in the next second, she whipped around and pointed at me. "You tramp, did you sleep around and pass something to my son?" I took a step back, keeping my tone even. "I think you are confused. Casey and I have not shared a bed for more than a year." Just then Casey's father arrived. He caught that last sentence, and his expression darkened instantly, the lines in his face growing deep and hard. He grabbed his mother by the arm and snapped, "Stop making a scene here." Then he turned and shot me a fierce glare. "This is all your fault." Inside the hospital room, Casey lay curled up on the bed, his body trembling like a dying shrimp. Out in the hallway, several patients had already gathered, whispering behind their hands, eyes full of curiosity and judgment. I heard the man in bed too has one of those diseases. Serves him right, he must have been fooling around. A nurse hurried to draw the curtain around Casey's bed, but it did little to stop the stares or hush the murmurs. I watched all of it unfold with a strange calm. My heart felt still, untouched. 3 days later, it was time to collect the lab results. The doctor motioned for me to sit. Tapping his pen gently against the medical reports spread out on his desk, his face was unusually serious. "Mrs. Graham," the doctor began, his voice low, "your husband's condition is complicated. The blood test confirmed a positive result for syphilis. The initial HIV screening also came back positive, though we will need a Western blot test to confirm it. In addition, his urethral culture grew a strain of drug-resistant gonorrhea. This particular strain does not respond to most first-line antibiotics." The room fell silent. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. I stared at the printed words positive, resistant lined up one after another, like small grenades. Suddenly, I felt an urge to laugh, not because it was funny, but because the absurdity of it all hit me at once. "So, doctor," I asked slowly, "you are saying he has 3 sexually transmitted infections all at once?" The doctor nodded. "Yes. And they interact in a way that makes treatment extremely challenging. In my 20 years of clinical experience, I have rarely seen such a complicated mixed infection. Has your husband traveled abroad recently?" Or perhaps I stood up before he could finish. "I understand. Doctor, thank you. This is a serious matter. I need to speak with my family before deciding what to do." The doctor nodded again, clearly wanting to say more, but he kept it to himself. What happened next was no longer in his hands. I returned to the hospital room. Without a word, I tossed the report onto the bed. Here you go, the results are out. 2 options, sell everything for treatment, or go straight for castration and end the problem at the source. All 3 of them. Casey, his mother, and his sister stared at me in shock. The old woman lunged forward, ready to scratch at my face. Without flinching, I reached into my bag and pulled out a fruit knife. Try me, I said calmly. The doctor spoke to me today about surgical options. I am his legal spouse, so all medical decisions go through me. They all fell silent, exchanging uncertain glances. The old woman's eyes suddenly lit up with an idea. Fine, divorce, sue for divorce. Once you are not his wife anymore, your opinion will not matter. I nudged the gauze on Casey's arm with the tip of the knife. You want a divorce? No problem, but I want $500,000. If you cannot pay, then I am still your wife. And I still get to decide whether or not you keep your parts. Casey swallowed hard, his voice shaking. Lena, you know I do not have that kind of money right now. Everything I had, I cut him off. Went to Henry's mother. You bought her handbags and jewelry. I know, that is exactly why I am asking for $500,000. Is that really too much? I checked. You can take out a personal loan, get me the money, and I will walk away. Think it over carefully. Without waiting for a response, I picked up my bag and walked out. At sunrise, Mother showed up at the house with several people in tow, taking photos and videos of the property. When I was handed a business card, everything became clear. They were desperate. They had reached the end of the road. They were trying to sell the house. It made sense. During Casey's stay in the hospital, they had already spent well over $10,000. Casey earned a decent salary, but supporting a son and a mistress at the same time was far beyond what a mid-level employee at a state-owned company could manage. To preserve what little dignity he had left, Casey scrambled to gather $500,000 and called me to say he agreed to the divorce, but he could not even wait for the mandatory 30-day cooling-off period. He demanded that we proceed immediately with a court filing. 1 week later, the divorce was finalized, with help from my family. I moved all my belongings out swiftly. Casey, now in urgent need of cash for his treatment, listed the house at a rock-bottom price. But I had already quietly spread the rumor that the house was cursed. I told agents that it was filled with legal disputes, that debt collectors came every other day throwing paint on the walls and jamming the locks. No one came to view it. As prices dropped lower and lower, his parents ended up putting their own house on the market too. Still, no buyers. Then, misfortune struck again. Henry's father was diagnosed with a medical condition. He called me, worried, trying to figure out where it all started. I told him kindly that it might all trace back to Casey. I had no problem placing the blame there. Eventually, Henry's father snapped. He stormed into Casey's workplace and caused a scene. He printed over 1,000 flyers and handed them out for an entire week, making sure their story was known by everyone. So Casey lost his job. By the time his house finally sold for a shocking 1/5 of its original value, I made my move. Though I had been a stay-at-home mother for years, I had worked quietly behind the scenes. I had been writing articles and publishing them online. Over time, I had managed to save a modest amount. My son and I lived simply, spending carefully. By now, I had over $1 million saved. During the divorce, Casey was so afraid I might claim part of his remaining assets that he never even thought to check what was under my name. He assumed I had nothing. On the afternoon we signed the transfer papers. The sun was bright and warm. I stood outside the municipal service center and watched Casey shuffle into a taxi, his back hunched, his movements slow. It had only been a couple of weeks, but the once confident, well-groomed man was now a shadow of himself. He had lost so much weight, his neck showed signs of infection, and his suit hung loosely on his bony frame like it belonged to someone else. As he climbed into the car he stumbled. The driver cringed, quickly lowering the window to let in fresh air. "Sweetheart," he began. I stopped him immediately. "You must have me confused with someone else. If you are here to talk about the house sale, then we can continue. Otherwise I will be on my way. Sell it. Just do not go." And with that, for $60,000. The house was legally transferred into my name. I stood there holding the freshly signed deed, watching as he reluctantly got into the car and pulled away. My heart, surprisingly, felt calm. A week later I packed up with Tommy and left the city for good. Our new home, in a good school district near my family, had already been arranged. My father had pulled a few strings, and secured Tommy a place at the top elementary school in the area. The day before we left I made a point to visit the house I had bought. The red paint that once stained the walls had long been repainted a fresh, clean white. A young couple was now renting the place. On the balcony, tiny baby clothes fluttered in the breeze. The space was filled with new life as we rode to the airport in a taxi. Tommy looked out the window with wide, sparkling eyes. "Mom, are we going to fly on a big airplane?" he asked, excitement bubbling in his voice. I reached over and gently stroked his hair. Remembering the phone call I had received earlier that morning, it was from Casey's doctor. He had called to inform me that Casey had tested positive for him. The disease had already progressed, and he was now suffering from a severe lung infection. The treatment, the doctor said, would cost around $800,000. "Yes, a big airplane," I replied with a kiss to Tommy's forehead. "And when we get to Grandma's house, I will take you to visit your new school." As the plane soared into the clouds, I looked out the window, watching the city shrink beneath us. Somewhere down there were streets filled with memories, some sweet, others sharp. I recalled what my lawyer had told me just days ago. Case's parents had sold their home to help pay for his treatments. They now lived in a rented apartment, just barely managing to get by. As for Mrs. Vaughn, she was now facing a divorce lawsuit filed by her husband. She had been left with nothing and, from what I heard, had gone to a southern city seeking medical care of her own. Time moved on, as it always does, gently but steadily, like water flowing through fingers. Tommy adapted quickly to his new school. The roses my father planted bloomed brightly in the yard, painting the air with their soft fragrance. I spent my mornings writing, one page after another, telling stories that had long waited to be told. On weekends we often packed a picnic and drove out of town. My parents, Tommy and I, we would find quiet meadows or lakesides, and let the world slow down around us. The rent from that small apartment still arrived on time each month. I opened a separate account just for it. It was not much, but I was saving it all for Tommy, for his future. Then, one afternoon, almost a year later, as I stood in the kitchen showing Tommy how to fold dumplings, my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. "Is this Mrs. Barnes?" The voice on the line was formal, official. "Your husband, Casey." Casey was dead. He had died alone in a cheap rented room on the outskirts of the city. His body had not been discovered until 3 days later, when the landlord came by to collect the rent. When the police went through his contacts, they found that the last outgoing call from his phone had been made to me. Cause of death was multi-organ failure. The officer said, "We are required by procedure to notify the next of kin." I cut him off quietly. "We are divorced. Please contact his parents." "We tried, but no one has answered. Would you be able to?" "I am sorry," I said gently. "I cannot help you." I ended the call. Tommy looked up from the kitchen counter, his small hands covered in flour. "Mommy, who was that?" "Wrong number," I replied, brushing the flour from his nose with a smile. Then it came to me. Today was a special day. I clapped my hands and said, "Sweetheart, go get dressed. Remember, I promised we would go to Disneyland today." That evening, under a sky lit by shimmering fireworks, Tommy laughed and jumped in my arms, eyes wide with wonder as bursts of color exploded above the castle. I tilted my head back and watched the sky, the fireworks casting warm glows across my face. I thought, just for a moment, about a promise Casey once made. Back when we first fell in love, he had said he would take me to Disneyland, but that promise, like so many others, was never kept, and it no longer mattered. I did not need anyone to complete my world. I had already built something beautiful on my own. Happiness is not a gift someone hands you, it is a fruit you plant, water, and one day quietly harvest with your own 2 hands. From that day forward, I became both the road and the home. A new beginning is never too late. The weeks after Casey's death passed quietly. There were no more phone calls, no more strangers at the door. Life, for the first time in years, began to feel like it belonged entirely to me. Spring settled over the town with soft rains and sunlight. Our small garden bloomed again, with bright tulips and wild daisies growing alongside my father's roses. Tommy took to helping my mother in the mornings, watering the plants with a little green can, always missing half the pots and soaking his shoes in the process. I watched from the porch, coffee in hand, as he chased a butterfly around the garden one morning, his laughter echoing against the fence. "Careful with the wings," I called gently. "You are supposed to look, not grab." He paused, his hand mid-air, and grinned sheepishly. "Sorry, Mommy." Moments like this made me believe, if only briefly, that peace could last. I continued writing in the mornings. Usually, while the house was still quiet, the stories came easier now. I no longer wrote with anger or hurt. Instead, I found myself drawn to tales of quiet courage of women who had once been broken, and who learned to live again. It felt less like I was inventing stories, and more like I was remembering something long forgotten. One afternoon, while picking up Tommy from school, I noticed a flyer pinned to the community board beside the gate. Creative writing course for adults, local library, Tuesday evenings. I paused. It had been years since I had taken a class, and even longer since I had shared anything I had written with strangers. But something about it tugged at me. That evening, after putting Tommy to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the flyer for a long time. When my father walked by and saw it, he said quietly, "You used to love learning. Remember how proud you were when you finished that manuscript before Tommy was born?" "I remember," I said softly. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "Then maybe it is time to do something for yourself again." The following Tuesday, I walked into the small library room with a notebook pressed tightly to my chest. There were only 6 other people, 2 retirees, a young woman who worked at the local cafe, and a man sitting quietly in the corner with a leather-bound notebook. The instructor was a soft-spoken woman named Ms. Abbott. She welcomed us with a kind smile and asked us to introduce ourselves by sharing why we had come. When it was my turn, I hesitated. "My name is Jenna," I said slowly, "and I used to write a lot, a long time ago, then life happened, but I think I want to start again." The others smiled or nodded. No one pried. At the end of the session, Ms. Abbott asked us to bring a piece of writing to share next time, just a page, something personal. I walked home that night with a strange flutter in my chest. It was not fear, it was something else, something close to hope. The next week, I read aloud a short essay I had written about the rosebush in our yard. How it had almost died during the frost, but come spring, bloomed brighter than ever. No one said anything for a moment after I finished. Then the man in the corner spoke. "I liked that," he said. "It was quiet, but it stayed with you." His name was Daniel. He was a literature teacher on sabbatical, recovering from surgery, and looking for a slower pace of life. Over the next few weeks, we often found ourselves sitting near each other during class, exchanging notes or soft laughs when Miss Abbott made her dry little jokes. Outside of class, life continued as always. Tommy lost his first baby tooth. He insisted on writing a letter to the tooth fairy, asking not just for coins, but for a tiny light-up dragon as well. I told him the fairy was on a strict budget. He made a new best friend named Luke, who lived around the corner. They spent hours building forts out of pillows and pretending to be jungle explorers. One afternoon, I came in to find them both wearing calendars on their heads, swinging from the curtain rods. It took 2 weeks to fix the curtains. Daniel and I began to exchange messages. It started innocently. Questions about writing prompts, book recommendations, a joke here and there. Then one day, he invited me to a small book reading in town. I hesitated. My first instinct was to say no, but something in me, something that had been quiet for years, nudged me forward. When I arrived, he was already waiting outside the bookstore, holding 2 cups of tea. "I was not sure if you would come," he said with a smile. "Neither was I admitted. The event was cozy. Just a circle of chairs and a few poems read aloud, but sitting beside him, sipping tea while listening to verses about longing and belonging, something inside me softened. Afterward, we walked down the quiet street under a sky scattered with stars. He said, "You carry your past like someone who has learned how to walk with it." I looked at him. "I do not want to walk with it forever, then let it rest," he said gently. "You deserve more than just survival." We said goodnight outside the gate. I watched him walk away, feeling a warmth that was not entirely new, but long forgotten. Weeks turned into months. I finished a short story and submitted it to a local magazine. They accepted it. I cried when I opened the letter, not from the honor, but from the realization that I still had a voice, and people were willing to listen. Tommy turned 6. We threw him a small party in the yard. My mother baked a cake shaped like a rocket, and the children spent the afternoon launching paper planes over the fence. That night, after the guests had gone and Tommy had fallen asleep with cake on his chin and stars in his eyes, I sat on the porch with my father. "You have changed," he said quietly. "I feel lighter," I told him. He nodded. "Your mother and I see it, and we are proud." Later that evening, Daniel sent me a photo of a rose he had seen growing wild near a trail. "Saw this and thought of your story," the message read. I replied with a simple heart emoji, then paused, fingers hovering over the screen. After a moment I added, "Want to join us for Sunday lunch next week? Tommy wants to show you his fort." He answered almost instantly, "I would love that," and I smiled. really smiled, feeling something open, something real, not because I needed rescuing, not because I had anything to prove, but because healing is not about forgetting, it is about growing something new in the place where something once broke that evening. As I stood at the sink rinsing dishes, I looked out the window. The roses were blooming again. And this time, I knew life would never be perfect, but it would be enough. More than enough, and I was finally ready to live it. Thank you for watching today's story. Take care, good luck.
After listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind, or maybe it has brought back some old memories. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories, and they connect all of us. Everyone has their own unique journey in life, and we all try to understand the world in our own way. These kinds of moments remind us that we are all human, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, and always learning something new. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with your friends. Your thoughts and feedback are always valuable to us, as they motivate us to create even better content. Every story has its own unique angle, and our goal is to understand everyone's perspective and make our content diverse and relatable. Stories like these help us realize that life's journey is different for everyone, and by hearing other stories, we learn something new. You can also share your own stories with us. Your experiences are valuable to us as well, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave your feedback. We aim to create content that brightens your mind and gives you new ideas every time. If you've already seen this video before, your feedback is still important. With every piece of feedback, we can improve our content and bring a new perspective to our viewers. Today, what we saw was just a small part of the many stories shared on Reddit and across the world. It's a reminder of how we all try to understand life by sharing our experiences with each other. This video was only an example of how we try to connect with others through storytelling, learning about different sides of life. We hope to continue sharing such stories that help us all learn and grow together. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon. If you haven't already, please like and follow for more amazing content. Your support keeps us going, and we will strive to bring you more thought-provoking and heartwarming stories. Until next time, take care and stay curious. *.